I'm Jessie. You're welcome. I was probably somewhat of an unconventional pick for the theme. I don't necessarily identify as a punk or a punk rocker. I do like punk music, but yeah, it's so there's different ways to. I don't know if any. I grew up in the late '90s, early 2000s, and was definitely party to many absurd arguments about what was real punk and what was not during that particular era of punk rock, and what made someone a poser and what did not. And there are pretty absurd arguments in retrospect about how passionate we all got about that argument. But as a middle-aged artist at this point, what I want to talk about, Luke suggested either me and or my partner Amanda, who I lived with, who is also a printmaker, also an artist, a poet, that one or the other of us could do this talk today as a good. So some of what I'll talk about will be a little bit like speaking for Amanda in some ways as well. We do work together, and we've worked on projects together and that kind of stuff. And Amanda's probably more punk than I am in several ways. But being that it just work schedules, Amanda runs an in-home daycare out of our house. And just, yeah, I'm the one that was able to get off work. I'm the one that's privileged to be here because my work schedule is more flexible. So what to me is the important thing or relevant, what I choose to talk about today with regards to punk theme is, I think about it at least early days of what was considered punk. Of course, it was before I was born, at least by a little bit. Class solidarity, anti-authoritarianism, and there was one more. I forget now. But yeah, I think punk rock was very class conscious from the beginning, and also very anti-authoritarian, anti-capitalist. There's ways to engage with how we do creative work in the world that aren't about making money and are not about being impressive in any way or any ways that's sanctioned. I do multiple kinds of art. What I've gravitated towards in the last 5 years or so has been letterpress posters with various messaging. I do a lot of other more figurative work. I used to be an art educator. So was it Melanie who just talked? Am I getting your name? Hi.
Yes.
Yes. Very much respect for you for being an educator. I taught middle school art for several years, and middle school, particularly in a public school setting, is just, it's I don't think anyone who has never done that work can possibly comprehend the emotional exhaustion that type of work entails. And it is very, very necessary. So respect to you for doing that. Okay, so yeah, you've probably been reading these already. So letterpress, it had antiquated print process, each individual letter is a different metal stamp made out of lead. This is the way they printed things, 150 years ago. Our garage is set up as a letterpress studio. I have sold these at various markets, at the BFF Outdoor Market and other things. I actually probably give more away than I do sell. As far as what it means to do art as a business, some things that I choose to focus on. I don't sell anything for more than I could afford myself. I have a very strong opposition towards art as a luxury product. The idea that labor, be it artistic labor or any other kind of labor, filtering upward, meaning that the labor is always filtering from the lower class towards the upper class, I have a very strong opposition to, particularly with creative work. It's siphoning your life force upward, essentially. I like to make work for people who are like me. So I don't sell it for more than I can afford myself comfortably. I often give it away. One of the reasons I do printmaking more than other forms of art is for that reason specifically. I don't make large monumental sculpture. I don't make 6 by 6 foot paintings that could only be hung in a mansion or art gallery or art museum. or something like that. I have in the past. I have made very large paintings in my early 20s, and I actually was probably more financially successful at that, but I didn't feel good at a certain point, and it takes up a lot of space. Especially if you don't sell everything. I've filled dumpsters full of art. I'm a very productive artist. But with printmaking, you can fit an entire year's worth of work into like one medium-sized box, essentially. Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and read a couple of these to you. It says, keep it classy. And by that I mean maintaining an awareness of class power dynamics, the aesthetics of class, and how that relates to professionalism and academia. The value of art and expression is inherent. It does not require profit, charity, endorsement, or approval. And the little part you can't read says, you do not need permission. You do not need to justify it to anyone because our time here is a brief and probable miracle. So it is fun seeing these out in the world. Every once in a while, I'll see like an Instagram post or something with somebody with this on their wall in the background. They've definitely made the rounds. So that's another thing that I think, part of at least punk rock back in the late 70s was a reaction against things like, the grandiose rock of the time, like Led Zeppelin, that would take 2 years to record a studio album with multiple guest musicians and hundreds of thousands of dollars of production value and that kind of stuff. But I think when it comes to art, the aesthetics of class is an interesting thing. There's a certain way. I'm stumbling on my words here. I hate the word sophistication. One of the better definitions of the word sophistication I've ever heard was superficially wise. I think that there is an air of sleekness that doesn't really say anything. I think there's a way that people see sophistication as it pertains to aesthetics and artwork as smart or classy, but I think that there's these certain markers that are subconscious we have of what makes something valuable, these markers of class. I don't frame my work ever. I don't sign my work hardly ever. I don't edition my prints. That's another a myth of false scarcity that is inherent with the art world and capitalism, where they'll write 1 through 50 on the bottom of a print. You could easily make more if you wanted, but you arbitrarily decide you're going to stop at 50 just so you can charge more for it. That seems like a silly thing to do. I make them on demand. If I run out, I may or may not make more, and that's pretty much it. I'll keep going. This one's made the rounds too. Yes. You can read it. This was part of a art residency project I did in Mexico City last June. It's about a year ago today. I would have been in Mexico City and surrounding areas. I traveled around a bit. I did a project where I was kind of researching and wanting to learn about NAFTA free trade agreements as pertains to workers' rights and how it affected working class people on both sides of the border, particularly with agriculture. I grew up on a corn farm in a small town, outside of a small town in rural Nebraska. Farm kid, grew up on a farm, corn farm, soybeans, chickens, cows, the whole thing. NAFTA had effects on us in interesting ways, also in Mexico. So I was there touring some of the milpa farms south of Mexico City, talking to various artists around there and that kind of stuff. Ended up creating these series of posters with messaging around these ideas in the ways that it basically made rich people on both sides more rich and poor people on both sides more poor, and ecological impacts due to industrial corn, that kind of thing. Here is a couple of our just prints in the print studio, or presses. This one on the left is probably from the 1880s. It is called a Chandler and Price clamshell or flywheel press, people will call it. It works. It would have normally had a foot treadle like a like a old sewing machine. Now someone put a giant motor on it, which is terrifying and I never use, so I just like hand crank the big flywheel. But this would have been a commercial operation back in the day, how people printed books and newspapers and that kind of stuff. I can crank out these posters pretty quick on it, which is nice. The one on the other side is a tabletop one. That one's probably also around that old. You can put lino blocks and stuff in there that are carved. This series of images was part of an illustration I did of this Rilke poem. So there's just kind of a general setup of, just selling little postcards and stuff at the market. I mean, I guess we make zines and other small prints and stuff. I guess that zines are punk rock, right? Yeah. This is, I think experimentalism is important to me. And I think it's another thing that is inherently anti-capitalist in that respecting your own thoughts and ideas enough that you're not trying to, that they have value in their own right. And I think being experimental is part of that you like have enough interests in your own internal life and ideas that you don't have to justify it by how is this going to make me money. Sometimes that's a bit of a privileged position. But like I have, for a long time now, fully separated any attempt to make a living from art. I think I started realizing a long time ago that most of the people I thought were making a living as an artist generally weren't. They were either doing design work that they actually hated or photography work they actually hated for other people, and there's very little creativity in it. Or two, they just had class and wealth privilege of some kind. Either they had a partner that was essentially supporting them, they had a trust fund, they had a nonprofit job, something of that nature. There's like very few people, even the people you assume that are like the most successful artists, most of the time the majority of their income, if not all of it, is coming from somewhere else. So it's just like I decided to take that pressure off of my work. Like, why put that burden on yourself if the likelihood of that being the case is just so small anyways? And a lot of the people who like try to pretend they're making their living off their creative work really aren't as you start to get to know more. But yes, this experimental process was, I went too far. But anyways, yeah, burning Parthenon, destruction of Western civilization. This is monotypes, which is basically, I do these series of each print that's a little bit different. It's a kind of an odd thing about printmaking is you assume that the idea is to make reproductions of the same thing over and over again, but a lot of the way that I tend to do printmaking is actually one-off prints in that each one is actually different than the other. I ink it up in different ways, modify it, that kind of stuff. My thing stopped working.
There you go.
Okay, so there's another example of that. It's a process that you paint onto a piece of glass or plexiglass, and then you generally get one print, but instead I will like re-ink it up differently each time to get this kind of like forever morphing series of different prints. Let's see, go ahead. Oh, yep, there's another one. You can keep going. Yep, there's another poster series. This one's about climate change. Yeah, go ahead, next one. This is actually one of my more recent ones that I actually really love. It's the process is just basically reprinting it multiple times, sliding it down until it runs out of ink. It just slowly fades it out of ink. I've kind of become particularly obsessed with this idea of geologic time, trying to actually like walk through life on a daily basis, trying to like wrap your head around looking at a landscape and seeing hills in motion, having an understanding of like how the last hills were made at the melting of the last ice age, and it's all basically silt from the river base that blew over into a big pile. But I think, I don't know. I think about death a lot. Yeah, I think we'd all be better people if we had a much more comfortable relationship with our own mortality. Yeah. Yep, next one. Those are cyanotypes. Those are the ones that are like the two chemical process that you mix together that's been around since like proto-photography days of the 1820s, 30s. Yeah, it's becoming more and more popular because it's cheap and easy to do, and it's a lovely blue color. But they're very fun. if anybody ever wants to learn how to do that, it's a thing that is fun and easy to do. The one on the right there is actually kind of more of a collaboration between me and my partner Amanda. We did this series of more abstract kind of geometric ones. And Amanda, being a poet, actually is better at words than me. So far, most of the posters I've showed you with the words were phrases I came up with. This was one of Amanda's. It's all the perpetrators of historic scale violence are roughly the same size as you. Which I think about at least on a weekly basis. I love that phrase, and I think it's extremely important, particularly in the time that we are in now. I really appreciated Natalie and the other hosts of bringing up what's going on in the world and kind of plugging Heartland Workers Center and CIRA. I'm old enough now. I turned 42 next week. I was around for Iraq war protests. I was around for Occupy. This is kind of the time when people start building connections that are useful later. So when stuff goes down next time around, you have the signal chat that you started during the last crisis, and you start building connections and building the muscles and knowledge of how to take action next time. That's some of the most important things that happen, is building those connections. And I think it's okay to fumble. It's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to take risks, particularly if you're like me, that is in a privileged demographic that is unlikely to be harassed by the police. I would encourage you to break laws. And put your physical body at risk. Yes, if you're in the position to where your risk is less and your privilege is more, break some laws. Okay, next one.
Can you say that again?
Break some laws, please. Yes.
When your risk is, I like how you
Yes.
phrased it.
More monotypes, more illustrative stuff, not particularly punk rock, being a nice little pastoral scene. Looks a little bit more Mormon, maybe. All right, next one. So these are kind of, anti-colonial. Being from a farm community in rural Nebraska with a history of course, ecocide and genocide. I only recently, 5 more minutes. Yep, yes, keep going. I'll say stop.
Okay.
Oh yeah, these are, keep going. These are large watercolors. I do some abstract stuff, keep going. These are a series I did where it's called Dead Trees on Dead Trees, which is I would find found charcoal from campfires and draw on stumps and logs. I did a lot of these for years. I started this during the pandemic. Keep going. There was a show I did recently-ish at the Mammo Gallery, the mobile trailer gallery in Benson. Kind of actually dealt a lot with AI and thought generation. Anyways, there's too much to talk about there. So here is, there's Amanda, there's me. This is our setup at BFF Art Market. There's me with my propaganda prints and such. We did letterpress demos out there, that kind of stuff. Yep, you can keep going. So this was several years ago, but one of the things as far as punk rock goes I wanted to talk about was the space we used to run and how we did that. This is the kind of do-it-yourself thing. Don't ask for permission, anything like that. We ran this space in Gifford Park next to what is Myrtle and Cypress. It had just opened then. We got kicked out eventually for political differences with our landlords. But we ran a community space. There was art. We did political organizing meetings like OTU and a few other groups used to have that as their regular meeting space back in the day. We ran Midtown Mutual Aid out of there. Feed the People also met and did a distribution out of there. There's a lot more to talk about this. I spent too long on the other things. But this was a falling apart, abandoned property that was unlivable. Landlords we convinced to rent it to us for about $125 a month because otherwise it was just sitting there. We put a lot of work into fixing it up, making it safe, cleaning it up. It was just covered with mice, poo, and roaches and everything. I had to reinstall the subfloor in the bathroom because the toilet was falling through, all this stuff. But we ended up making it an extremely useful space for the community where all kinds of things happened. Yep. So this is some of the events that we had there. Most of the art shows we had were fundraisers for various causes. A lot of the food distributions and other mutual aid things. We had open hours every Sunday. People could just stop by. Right next to Gifford Park, we always, had a lot of unhoused folks that would come in, and we'd always let them use the bathroom and give them food and that kind of stuff. Also, one of the reasons we got kicked out for being too kind to the unhoused population. Zine rack, political propaganda, also very punk rock. I think most cities will have spaces like this. Whenever I travel to a different U.S. city, I always ask, where's the anarchist info shop? And that's what I want to see. Granted, I don't always like to see the same thing in every city, but like there's a contingent of this in most places. And they're really interesting people, and it's always fun to see. There's a place in Denver called Mutiny Cafe, which is pretty cool. Anyways, yeah, we'd have film screenings, discussion groups, all kinds of stuff. As far as DIY, I was weirdly proud of this, of our kind of terrible aesthetic. I would just got a bunch of desk lamps from thrift stores for next to nothing, and would just bolt them to the ceiling for our track lighting for art, that kind of thing. Yeah, we did a lot with the Save Yates campaign. We used to organize meetings there for that. Yeah, I think that might be about it. So I guess I'll leave a couple minutes for questions, and I'm sorry that was very rambling and incoherent.